carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members. Unlimited defense budgets, unmatched legal expertise. Carry the same level of support police officers have. Carry CCW Safe, the highest caliber.
And we're back. And I've got my co-host John Wheaton with me tonight. The rumors of his demise are greatly exaggerated. He is still with us. How you doing, John?
Yeah, I'm good, man. It's called having 2.5 jobs, a family, kids, and chaos in the holidays. So you know how that goes.
Yeah, try not to be a slack. Try not to be a slacker. Okay.
Well, I mean, the 100-hour weeks, I do have a little bit of time to squeeze in there. So
I hear you. I hear you. So since you were on last, I've done some experimenting. I've switched things around so we can get off the X a little bit quicker. So the conflicted question is at the end. Just a quick mention that if you all want the brief that has all the links in it that we go off of, you can go to patreon.com/survivaldispatch, sign up for free and get it there. And I want to mention we're closing in on the webinar that I'm going to be doing with Advantage Gold, and they have sweetened things up a little bit. Check this out, John. So it's the size of a 45 ACP bullet, but it's 1 ounce of 99.999% solid silver. It's pretty neat. You know, if you have an invasion of werewolves or, you know, vampires, anything like that, just throw a primer on it. Good to go. But if y'all in the audience go to the first link down below in the description, it'll take you to this page. If you sign up and you attend, you'll get one of these silver bullets amongst a bunch of other stuff. They're giving away books and all kinds of cool stuff. All right, that is it. We have got a special guest tonight. I'm going to bring him in first. And Pastor Artur Pawlowski. Good to see you, Artur. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for having me on your show.
I'm going to bring on the rest of the panel, and then I'm going to circle directly back to you and have you do your own introduction so I don't do you any injustices. So we've got our in-house 007, Jeff MD, 26 years CIA operative, and our friend Justin Moon from Car Arms. And the reason I asked Justin and his brother, Pastor Sean Moon, to join us tonight is because their family escaped communism, much like you did, Artur. And I felt that they could probably add just an additional perspective because clearly John, Jeff, and I have no firsthand experience with communism. So with that being said, Artur, I'd appreciate you introducing yourself to our audience. I'm going to guess that the vast majority of them know who you are. You're pretty infamous here in the United States.
Well, I am a father. That's the number one thing, a believer in Christ. I pastor 2 churches. We feed thousands of people on the streets of Calgary. I started many ministries like this around the world. I grew up behind the Iron Curtain under the boots of the Soviets, under communism and socialism. And in the 80s, I saw the remedy. So I grew up in hell, and I saw the remedy to that hell, which is people. People are the most powerful weapon that there is, and I saw that firsthand when I was growing up. When the millions of Polish people finally said enough is enough, they took it to the streets, and they did not have to fire a weapon, believe it or not, just by the sheer numbers and their dedication and their conviction of taking back what's rightfully theirs. They overpowered the enemy, the 50,000 communists that came with soldiers, machine guns, and tanks. And the Polish people came with their numbers, with a giant, huge cross. They went to their knees and they chanted, "We want God, we want God." And I'm telling you, that took down the biggest empire at that time on earth, the Soviet Empire. And just a few years later, thanks to you, actually, thanks to America, because you have to understand that you played a huge part of our liberation by, of course, at that time, one of the most fascinating, in my opinion, presidents that you ever had, Reagan, that went to the Berlin Wall. And you have to remember, I was on the other side of that wall when he said those famous words, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, and it happened. The wall collapsed, Iron Curtain was broken, and not just we, the Poles, but Europe was liberated. But here is a repetition of history. And we are seeing the same type of people, different names, different faces, trying to achieve the same thing. That's why the message never changes. Their message never changes, but our message never changes as well. And before we went on this program, you were talking about your amendments, and I have traveled around the United States of America quite often. I'm more in the US than in Canada. And everywhere I go, people tell me we have the Constitution, we have the, all the amendments, we have the Declaration of Independence. And I look at them and I said, listen, people, you don't get it. Tyrants don't care about your piece of paper. Dictators don't care about your Constitution. They don't care about your Declaration of Independence. You must care about your rights, and you must rise up for your rights, because you have to also remember that I am a Polish immigrant. Poland was the second country on earth that implemented Constitution few years, literally 2-3 years after the United States of America. And when the Germans attacked us, they did not care about our Constitution. When the Soviets took us under their boots, they did not care about our human rights. They did not care about international laws. They did not care about our Constitution. What I'm trying to say to you is your country will look the way you want your country to look. It's up to us. It's up to the people. We, the people, we all go back to the famous words, we the people, we have the power. And we the people have shown them in just few weeks ago what we want. And Donald J. Trump, in my opinion, your rightful president that has won 3 terms now, is in power, or will be in power in just few short months. And that's a good thing, because it's sending a very strong message to those wannabe tyrants, the globalists, back off, we're coming after you. So I have tasted hell, I have tasted heaven, and I think that's why they hate me so much, because I'm not talking about I read the book. I grew up seeing this, unfolding in front of my very eyes.
Well said, Pastor. I want to get into the trials and tribulations that you've had in Canada. And I mentioned before we went live, we have told our audience for a long time that if you pay attention to what's going on in other Western nations, it's a harbinger of what's fixing to come here next. So Australia, New Zealand, Canada, all of those countries. So we've been watching your case in particular since the whole COVID lockdown. And if they can do it there, they can do it in California. And if they can do it in California, they'll bring it to the rest of the United States. So I'm going to play a short video. It's a couple minutes long. And then I'd like you to describe the mischief charges, the breaching of release order, all that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to turn it over to the panel to get their questions addressed as well. So here we go.
Get out. Get out of this property. Immediately get out. Get out of this property immediately. Out. I don't want to hear anything. Out of this property immediately. I don't want to hear a word. Out. Out. Out of this property immediately until you come back with a warrant. Out. 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 Out of this property. Immediately out. Immediately go out and don't come back. I don't want to talk to you. Not a word. Out of this property immediately out. I don't care what you have to say. Out. Out. Out of this property, you Nazis. Out. Out. Gestapo is not allowed here. Immediately, Gestapo is not allowed. Out. Do you understand English? Get out of this property. Go. So go. Go. And don't come back without the warrant. Out, Nazi. Out. Out. You understand? Nazis are not welcome here. Out. And don't come back without a warrant. Do not come back without a warrant. You understand that? You're not welcome here. Nazis are not welcome here. Gestapo is not welcome here. Do not come back, you Nazi psychopaths. Unbelievable, sick, evil people. Intimidating people in a church during the Passover. You Gestapo, Nazi, communists, fascists. Don't you dare coming back here. Can you imagine those psychopaths? Passover, the holiest Christian festival in a year, and they're coming to intimidate Christians during the holiest festival? Unbelievable. What is wrong with those sick psychopaths? It's beyond me.
All right. So, Artur, tell us what exactly happened there. Why did they come to your church in the first place?
Well, to understand this, we have to go a little bit back in time,
Okay.
because in the beginning of 2020, here's what I do. Our church, we feed thousands of people on the streets of Calgary. I started over 40 ministries like this in Europe. I started orphanages, medical clinics, churches in Africa. So we are a church that is not just talking. We are in the middle of action, if you will. We are doers, not just talkers. So I have been feeding the homeless people since 1999. That's my 25th year. So I operate a soup kitchen, and I have been doing this forever. So I received a letter from the mayor's office, from the city hall, telling me that we are in the middle of this crisis and I have to stop feeding the poor. So I replied to them and I said, if we are truly in the middle of this crisis, then my services right now are needed more than ever. And I appealed it to the mayor. I appealed it to the premier. Premier is like your governor in the States. I appealed it to every minister. And guess what? No one replied. So I kept feeding the poor. So that's my crime. I have been feeding the poor, and the police showed up, health inspectors, bylaw services, and I became the first Canadian to get that garbage ticket. I won't say the names because if you're on YouTube, but the censors are the losers. I call them the losers, and the leeches, they cannot survive on their own. So they're such a losers, they need to censor us and the truth, because their house of cards is built on lies, lie on top of lie, manipulation, misinformation, disinformation. So a person like me, it's very dangerous to them because I speak the truth the way it is. It's a black and white truth. It's either left or right, life or death. There is no sitting on a fence, if you will, and they really are terrified of this. So I got this ticket. So far, I got over 350 citations, over 120 court cases, criminal charges, QB, which is Queen's Bench now, it's the King's Bench. I was in provincial courts, I was in courts of appeal, you name it, in and out of prison for my job. I have never been arrested in Canada for doing any real criminal activity. All the arrests, all the courts, all the citations, which, like I said, over 350 citations so far, are related to me doing my job as a pastor, either preaching, reading the Bible, or feeding the poor. I was charged with giving free goods and services without the license. I was charged with illegally distributing printed material, which is Bibles and gospel tracts. I was charged criminally for preaching. I was arrested and charged with 7 criminal charges for publicly reading Bible, which I was told is offensive. I was told that the name of Jesus is offensive and therefore it's illegal to be in a public. I can go on and on for days, literally for days, about what happened. But going back to the most famous things, if you will, I just decided to keep feeding the poor. That's it. So they gave me a ticket, not a big deal. As you know, I have many of them. And I kept doing what God called me to do. So that, of course, they didn't like that. And they kept sending police officers. So from the beginning of 2020, when I became the first blast Canadian with that garbage. They were hunting us down. Literally every single church services, I had police officers, from few to my record, when the Canadian government declared, I don't know if you remember that, but they declared that they're canceling Christmas. They literally said they're canceling Christmas because it's super dangerous. They actually passed a mandate saying that singing is prohibited by law. It's just like, even when I share this after those few years, it's just unbelievable craziness. Singing was prohibited by law. Also, Lord's Supper was illegal. I'm a Polish immigrant. I get it. I'm different. I'm a peculiar person. I'll tell you why. First of all, because I am different than most of your pastors. I actually read the Bible and I preach the Bible. I don't buy sermons on internet so I can give people a fancy PowerPoint presentations. I actually read the Bible. I pray about my sermons, and sometimes it takes me a week to prepare a message for the people. So I read the Bible. And in the Bible, it says, do not forsake the gatherings of the saints. In the Bible, it says, every time you meet, remember me, right? Through the blood and Lord's Supper, you're to do it. And also, God lives in the worship, in the praises of his people. So what I did, I call it head-on collision Artur Pawlowski style, which is actually quite simple. I just do opposite. When the devil tells me to do something, I do opposite. So if an enemy comes and tells me, shut the church's doors, I would open an extra day. When they told us we are not allowed to sing, I told the worshipers to sing extra songs. When they told us no Lord's Supper and Holy Communion, every single time we were showing up, we will have Lord's Supper. So that's how I fight, and I live stream it. So, for example, when they said, the chief of police said that they're going to send police officers and they will patrol neighborhoods, seeing if we have extra cars in our driveways. Well, I invited my whole family, my friends. I fed them all in the house. I did the biggest dinner I could manage, took pictures, sent it to them, and said, come and get me. So that's how I fight them, head-on collision. So when they canceled Christmas on television, I went on television too, and I said, you devils, I don't know who you think you are. You want to be pharaohs. You think you're some kind of a green Grinches. You can't cancel God. You cannot cancel Christmas. So I invited people to the biggest Christmas celebration in the land, and thousands of people showed up. You got to remember, this is the total lockdown. This is like no one is allowed to come anywhere, and they were arresting everyone that was there. Now we have thousands of people. We're celebrating. I did AAA steaks for the homeless. We had gifts for the poor, and I was told that I did the unthinkable. I broke some kind of a record because we had over 120 police officers, 52 police cars, 20 cops on bicycles, and the chief of police that showed up at our Christmas celebration in our church. Also, SWAT team showed up and anti-terrorists. And I did, according to them, the unthinkable, because I hired carolers and we were singing Christmas carols. And for that, I ended up with 15 garbage tickets, and it took me 2 years to fight them. So that's 2020. And why am I telling you all of this? Because it's very important to understand that I didn't just wake up one morning angry and I started to yell at the nice police officers that were so, gentle and quiet and polite Canadian way. I did it because they were hunting us down for a very long time, for over a year. It was in our church building. They showed up and they blocked our driveway. Then they took a telescopic cameras, took pictures of our children and women, and that was beginning of 2021. April, in April, that was our holiest time of the year, which is a Passover celebration, where the Easter weekend, when they trespassed in our church. People have to understand that those officers, they broke the Criminal Code of Canada, Section 176, 1, 2, and 3. They broke our Constitution. They broke our fundamentally guaranteed, like your amendments, but we have Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which has a preamble that states whereas Canada acknowledges the supremacy of God and the rule of law. So all of those things, national and international laws, were broken by those, in quote, nice officers. So I had only one word for them, really: get out, or two words: get out. I wouldn't have a conversation or debate with those people. My sermon for the weekend was Pharaoh, let my people go. So I was already pumped with the message of injustice in Egypt, Pharaoh murdering children, murdering people. And when they showed up, they represented the pharaohs of today. And I called them the Nazis, and I called them Gestapo. Why? I want you to understand what that means. And that's why I wrote the book, but I'll tell you about the book later. Gestapo simply means political police. So those officers were no longer acting in the capacity of peace officers. They were acting at the biddings of the politicians, crooked politicians, and they were acting like uniformed gangsters, if you will, working for the biggest mafia, Al Capone, whatever. They were Gestapo, political police, working for the establishment, working for the political party, making sure that everyone falls in line. That's why I call them by their proper pronouns. It's all about feelings right now, right? It's all about pronouns. So I just simply call them by their proper pronouns, which is psychopaths, Gestapo, and the fascists, and all those other things. I kind of run out of names because you got to remember, my weapon as a Polish immigrant is yelling. I don't have any other means to communicate except using words, doing sermons, and sometimes when I'm really upset and I'm stirred, I will raise my voice and I will call you names because I can't do anything else. Those people have guns, they have tasers, they would gladly shoot me down if I did anything more than yelling and screaming. So, of course, those people went back. I didn't know that this video, this little recording I posted on Facebook, I think it was Facebook, I didn't know that is going to be the #1 played video on earth. It was over 1 billion views around the world. When it went viral and I started to do interviews, I was interviewed by the biggest media outlets on earth. And the Canadian government came with a vengeance. They found crooked judges, David Gates, and I don't know if he is related to your devil, your domestic terrorist, Bill Gates, but David Gates of Alberta, he gave them the power to enter our church with whomever they wished. So they showed up with anti-terrorists. Can you believe it? A peaceful church, a guy that is just raising his voice, and they showed up with anti-terrorists. So I don't know what they were thinking because I kicked them out again. So the anti-terrorists showed up again. I kicked them again, and I would not allow them to enter our building. I said, well, you want to arrest me? Arrest me. Not the first time, and I'm sure of it. Not the last time. So you want to go for it, go for it. But you will not intimidate our people in the church. So that's what was going on for about a month. Then they found another crooked judge. I call him John Rook, the crook. John Rook, the crook, is the judge that gave them the power to arrest anyone that would oppose health inspector. And they showed up armed with that court order. You got to remember, if you know anything about the law, all of that was done ex parte, without our knowledge. We had a legal team, we had lawyers, but they would not even bother to contact us. They did it off camera, like the gangsters, like the mafia that they are. So equipped with that crooked judge's document, they showed up. And by the way, you need to know that those judges, right after they signed the documents, retired. So they got a pail of money because right after signing the documents, they were nowhere to be found. They retired from being judges. So they did their dirty whatever, and then they disappeared. So I got ultimately, anti-terrorists showed up, and they opened the door, was packed house, standing room only, and they realized, because men said that if they would come to arrest you, they will have to arrest all of us. And that would be a big problem for even for the anti-terrorists, arresting hundreds of people in the church. So what they did, they saw that this is going to turn bad, and they withdraw themselves, and they waited. They waited for the people to go home. And on my way home, I was arrested with my brother David in the middle of the highway. The picture behind us, that's actually the picture from that arrest. I was arrested with my brother David, and I don't know why they get my brother. My brother David was arrested with me 12 times already. It looks like those cops spend too much time in coffee shops, and they get 2 for 1. So they decided that they will get, the pastor and his brother at the same time. It just never made any sense to me, except trying to hurt our family. So me and my brother David, we got arrested, manhandled, tortured actually. We spent 3 days, 2 nights on concrete, where we met another crooked judge, Adam Germain. Adam Germain is another Alberta's crooked judge because he started his proceedings. So we are shackled like animals, okay? We are handcuffed, shackled, facing the judge, and he starts this garbage of quoting CNN or CBC. And I turned to my brother David. I said, this is a political operative. He has nothing to do with being a judge. We will not find justice with this guy. They have already decided to convict us. So after that, of course, I was right. But after that, I decided to come to America to warn you. God said to me, go to America and warn them. Whatever is happening in China, we call this land now China, because we are truly living behind the Iron Curtain already. Tell the American people. Actually, when I was in the plane, and which was a miracle on its own, because God told me to come to America. I took my son, Nathaniel. We went to the airport. I bought tickets, and don't ask me how we were let in. It was a total lockdown. God wanted us in America. And we are in an empty plane, commercial empty plane. And I prayed, and I said, God, what do you want me to tell the American people? And here is what he said to me, which really rocked me at that moment. He said this: tell this great American eagle that it's time for this eagle to rise up once again and start flapping its wings. I was shocked what I've heard, because he calls you great American eagle. Also, he's telling you you've done it before, and he wants you to do it again, to fight for freedom, and not just for yourselves. Your uprising, your fight was not just for yourself, but for others as well. And start moving, action, not just sit under a tree like a Buddha and pray, but pray and go and do something. Rise up, stand up. So I was supposed to be in the States for just a few weeks, but invitations kept coming, and I got invited everywhere. I traveled all over your beautiful country. I met politicians, governors, you name it, Congress people, and I did my best to scare them, to scare the American people, because communism has no mercy. Socialism has no mercy. Fascism has no mercy. It's like a cancer, will keep destroying, pillaging, raping, and killing until there is nothing left. You have to understand with whom, or what kind of enemy you're dealing with. This enemy has no heart, and it will never stop. It's like a cancer that has to be cut out, or it will finish you off. So 4 months later, finally, I had to come back. I mean, I'm a pastor of 2 churches, my family. Finally, I said, I'm coming back. So upon arrival, I've never seen any man ever, except Hollywood productions, to be arrested in the plane or stepping out of the plane. But it happened to me. We arrived, I stepped out of the plane, and I was immediately arrested. 2 counts, multiple counts, but 2 warrants for my arrest, inciting people to come to an illegal gathering, officiating an illegal gathering, and some garbage stuff. I baptized my daughter in a river in a public park. I was charged criminally for that. Not wearing a muzzle, I was charged criminally for that as well, and some nonsense. So I was taken, of course, handcuffed. And it's funny, because the customs were looking when I was handcuffed. They said, we will look everywhere. I don't know what they were thinking, that I'm smuggling Donald J. Trump in a suitcase. I don't know what they were thinking, but they said they will look everywhere. And so they searched, they broke into my laptop, which was $5,000 laptop that I had to replace, because they literally broke illegally, without a warrant, without the judge's order, into my personal computer. So anyway, at that time was catch and release, as we used to laugh about it. I would be picked up, arrested in the middle of the highway, let go, bail, arrested again, attending a rally, arrested by every force in the land. I was arrested by your FBI, that's RCMP. I was arrested by Calgary police. And then, of course, it would take me a couple days to tell you the story. That's why I wrote the book. The whole story is in a book, Lions Do Not Bow. But what happened after that, they started to call me Canada's pastor. I organized rallies. I organized protests. I had, a lots of views, big channels. Of course, they were taken down by the Chinese Canadian government. I had big following, and we were growing in numbers. We started with like 7-10 people. We grew to 20,000 people every week on the streets of Calgary. I traveled all over my country. I went to different provinces, organizing rallies, protests, marches, you name it, church services, at the courthouses, fighting for political prisoners. That's what I was doing every single week. So then, because of this, truckers started to roll, and they called me and they said, "Pastor, would you become our pastor for the movement?" And of course, they didn't have to ask me. To this day, I look at this as the greatest honor, that I was able to be their pastor for the truckers and the farmers during the biggest Canadian civil rights movement in the history of Canada. So we did church services. We fed them. We organized food for the truckers. Off they went to Ottawa. We stayed behind because another truck convoy opened in Milk River. Milk River and Coutts is the point of entry between Montana and Alberta. And the farmers and the truckers came there, and they called me and they said, the police officers are dressed in black and they're pointing their machine guns at our children playing street hockey. Pastor, can you come and cheer us up? Can you do a number of church services? So I took my son, I took my worshipers, speakers, food, packed the car. Off we went to Milk River, did the church service there. And the whole thing was blocked by RCMP. Again, RCMP is like your FBI. And then I went to Coutts. In Coutts, I did 19-minute sermon. During that sermon, I told the Canadian people to stand for God and state-given rights, to do it peacefully. I told them 3 times, no guns, no swords. I reminded them about what I have seen growing up under the boots of the Soviets and the solidarity movement, the power when the people come together. I said they don't have enough cops. They don't have enough police officers to arrest 1 million Albertans. If we say enough is enough, we are the power. We the people. We can dictate how our life is going to look tomorrow. And I said, stand up for the sake of your children. Stand up for them. So we had Lord's Supper. We were singing hymns, national anthem. We had a dinner. Off I went home. Not a big deal. Nothing unusual. It's my regular thing. I just did my job as a pastor. A few days later, after we had another 20,000 people rally in Calgary, I stepped out of my home, and I was, gentlemen, arrested by every force in the land. Literally, this was the great takedown of Al Capone of Calgary, El Chapo of Alberta. There was undercover police, there was uniformed Calgary police, there were detectives, anti-terrorists, special SWAT team with cameras recording the whole thing. I was arrested, charged criminally for terrorism. I was charged for inciting mischief, which has 10 years of imprisonment attached to it, breach of release order, and interrogated for hours and hours and hours, taken to prison, stripped naked, and solitary confinement. I was told that I'm going to spend 2 years in solitary confinement under the most brutal, at least for Canadian standards, brutal treatment that you can imagine. I was being kept in metal cages. Metal cages were no bigger than me sitting, sitting without being able to move. I was kept in solitary cell. I was taken from my cell with water, with washroom and bed, to another one on concrete, no water, no washroom. And that was the treatment that they were giving me. And I was considered the most dangerous inmate. I was not allowed to have any interactions with other inmates. But everywhere I went, I was recognized by the inmates, by the criminals. So they were coming to my door, and I was praying for them, and I was doing mini sermons. And 21 days later, in my isolation, they sent a petition to the director of prison, and they said, if you don't let him out, you're going to have a riot in prison. So then they let me out for 1 hour to have interactions with the inmates. I was doing church services and prayers for them. My wife, my brother David, and my son Nathaniel, with our church and other freedom people, they organized the longest ongoing protest in the history of prison. For every day I was on the inside, they were on the outside. My wife rented 4 powerful speakers. They were doing church services. They were doing rallies, protests, Jericho marches, marching around prison. Has never been done in the history of Canadian prison, what they were doing. Some were arrested even for doing this. So brave, courageous people. Then Americans kicked in. They started to phone politicians, Ohio state representatives, some Congress people, some senators from America started to put pressure on the Canadian politicians. Tens of thousands of people were phoning, fighting for my life. During that time, you have to also remember that they tried to assassinate me multiple times. When I was still on the outside, they lit my house on fire in the middle of the night. They unscrewed tire in my pickup truck. So while we were driving, the tire just took off. They attacked me physically, guns, knives, punched, Antifa in my backyard. They lit our church on fire. They burned down our children's bus. They vandalized our church multiple times for 3 months every week. They broke into our church, stole our equipment, speakers, cameras, everything, multiple times. So this was on a regular basis. I was being attacked. I had to walk with other people just to watch my back because it was very bad. Antifa said that they're going to assassinate me. They came with guns, machine guns. It was brutal. We were physically attacked with those flash bombs and other weapons. And if it was not for some brave people, I won't name them because you will be censored. I'll probably be dead already. So then back into cell, 5 different inmates already testified to my lawyers that the guards were giving them incentives to assassinate me, to murder me in prison. So, but the inmates, I was a hero in prison. Everywhere I showed up, they were banging on the doors, free Pastor Art, free Pastor Art. Like they were attending my church services. I think I broke some kind of a record. I had every single inmate in my entire unit attending my church services and prayer meetings. It was fascinating. It was incredible. The solidarity, and they're criminals, but they recognized that I was there an innocent man, that I was there for fighting for freedoms and for rights. Twice a day, the guards with nurses are giving illegal drugs, very highly narcotics to prisoners twice a day. So I was exposing all of that. I did rallies from jail on a phone. My wife would put a telephone to the speakers. I would be speaking to the protesters. I would do interviews. I would do my political statements, and that enraged them so much that I was literally kidnapped by sheriffs from my prison cell to hundreds of miles away without the knowledge of my lawyers, without the knowledge of my family, and shackled, the Penguin March, the whole 9 yards. And I was taken to MaxPot. MaxPot is a prison for the most dangerous terrorists in the country, in Edmonton. And I was placed in solitary freezing conditions. You can't sleep. You're shivering. They refused to give me an extra blanket, and was minus 28 on the outside. And they said they gave me a document, and that document I included in my book, Lions Do Not Bow. It stated that I am considered so dangerous, I have to be housed alone and indefinitely. Indefinitely. So they were aiming to keep me there forever as a terrorist, without court. So I said my goodbyes to my wife. During all of this, I want you to know I was writing. I was writing the whole story, the background story. I was writing every day about what I was observing, about the judges, about the guards. I was doing a manuscript was stolen by the Canadian authorities already 3 times, and thanks to the brave lawyer that fought for it and actually smuggled out of prison, we have the Lions Do Not Bow. So this book has been smuggled by a brave woman, a lawyer that risked to get this story out, because you know the human memory, right? You remember and then you don't remember. So I was able to write everything down. And what happened was the judge learned that I am being kept in total isolation in the entire unit for the most dangerous terrorists alone. So hundreds of cells. I was the only one in solitary little cage, watched by 3 different guards at the same time, with a document that they can keep me there indefinitely. And the judge learned about this, and they scared them, because jail, remand, are privately owned institutions in Canada. So that scared the administration, and they moved me to a psych ward. So can you believe it? I was kept in a psych ward with a guy that murdered his brother with a machete, slashed him to pieces, and I was considered so dangerous that they said I cannot even have a pen. They put me with this guy, and he had about 15 different pens. And I shared with him, I said, well, the Canadian government believes I'm so extremely dangerous, I cannot have a pen. And he says, well, you can have mine. So he gave me his pen, and I kept writing my story. I spent a week over there, and then eventually the judge released me and put me on house arrest for a year and a half. I spent a year and a half on house arrest. Ultimately, I faced my accusers. I was found guilty on everything, including terrorism. I was found guilty on inciting mischief, and I faced 12 and a half years of imprisonment. In the meantime, that's my son Nathaniel that testified before the European Parliament about what the government is doing to me in Canada. For that, he was arrested already 5 times just for testifying before the European Parliament, and to a point that he was blacklisted in Canada, and he was not allowed to finish his studies, and he had to move to Virginia and is studying law in Liberty University, because the Canadian government is not allowing my son to finish university. So what happened was, I'm almost done. I know it's a long monologue. During that time of house arrest, Canadian government offered me a guaranteed seat at the legislature. They offered me a government job, $250,000 a year. I was offered all kinds of different bribes, attempted briberies, if I would keep my mouth shut. So they said, we will make this disappear, but you cannot talk about what happened to you. When they finally, after 10 months, realized that I'm not bowing, I started to receive, and our CIA brother will know this because probably he knows people that were doing those kinds of things. We call them political fixers. They call themselves political fixers. Those are the individuals that if the politicians have problem with someone, well, they send those, fixers, political fixers. And the fixers for 3 months were telling me that the judges bought and paid for. Gordon Crinky is his name, that crooked judge from Brooks, Alberta. Gordon Crinky is bought and paid for, that if you don't withdraw yourself from the public life for 2 years, they said, you must withdraw yourself from the public life for 2 years, or you will go to prison and you will be assassinated in prison if you don't do this. Well, I took my chances with God, and I decided to expose them about what those political fixers were doing. And all of that is in the book, which has been printed by the brave American publishers, because I don't think there is a printer, a publisher in Canada would be brave enough to print my book, because I am naming the judges, I am naming the politicians, I'm telling you the whole story, the attempted briberies, political fixers, what I saw in prison, the background story of the Get Out video, the rallies, the arrest, what happened every single day, the psych ward, the whole 9 yards, and also what happened after with the court cases, the truck convoy, and has become last week, The Lions Do Not Bow has become the bestseller multiple days in a row. And the first day that went live, we sold every single copy. So now we've ordered many, many thousands of more copies, and they will be available. So if you can go to Amazon.com for the American people, Lions Do Not Bow, you can pre-order your book. When it arrives, they will send it to you. Or for Canadians, remember, this is a book that was confiscated by Canadian government 3 times. Amazon.ca, you can pre-order your book, and we can together show them that we, the people, are more powerful than those psychopathic, fascistic, wicked, evil hyenas. The book is called Lions Do Not Bow Before the Hyenas, because we were called to be lions, following the lion from the tribe of Judah. And lions do not bow before those evil, wicked hyenas.
We need to pivot a little bit here. I'm seeing our viewership starting to drop off. So I'm going to go to a quick message from one of our sponsors, Sawyer Products. When we come back, I'm going to go around the panel clockwise. So Pastor Moon, then Jeff, then Justin, and then John. And we'll get some questions in here. So hang with us. It's going to kick you all back into the green room, but it'll bring you back here automatically when it's done.
The Sawyer Mini is the most versatile personal filtration system available. It's a perfect solution for backpacking, hiking, hunting, fishing, scouting, international travel, and emergency preparedness. At a mere 2 ounces, the Mini fits in the palm of your hand and can filter up to 100,000 gallons of water from any freshwater lake, river, or stream. The Sawyer Mini has a 0.1 micron absolute pore size. It was tested to 10 million parts of bacteria and 1 million parts of protozoa without a single breakthrough. This is the highest level filters can be tested to, so we're confident these are the highest rates of filtration available.
All right, so Pastor Sean, being the other pastor on the panel here, family escaped communism from North Korea. I would love to hear your thoughts on what's happened with Pastor Artur. I mean, it's hard for me to imagine this could happen in this day and age in a Western country.
Yes, my goodness, Pastor Arthur, God bless you, sir, so much. Amazing. God is using you for an incredible testimony to give and bring the glory of Christ to the world. So we bless you and we thank you so much for what you have endured. None of it is in vain, for Christ has already won, and he is standing with you, and we are so grateful to be able to be in your presence today. It's a tremendous story. You know, my father was freed from North Korean death camp in 1950 by the U.S. Armed Forces. He was imprisoned multiple times under the colonial Japanese, also the South Korean government, North Korean government, and also the U.S. government came after him as well, because he ran one of the biggest conservative newspapers in the entire country, the Washington Times. And so he was in the North Korean death camp in the 50s and was freed. And you know, it just all your tribulations remind me of that. He was in cells that was tiny little rooms with 17 people in, and they had one hole in the ground, which was just a dug trench for feces and urine. And he chose to sleep right next to him. People would have to do feces right in front of him, defecate right in front of him, and he would choose to take that after 12 12 to 16 hours of forced labor per day for 2.5 years and 2 years and 8 months. And just when I think about what you went through, it kind of reminds us of our father and what communism is. He always taught communism was political Satanism, that it is truly the beast on the earth, and Satan has his hands and feet on the ground, just as God uses us as his hands and feet. We have to remember God's hands and feet were also nailed. So, if we're doing the work of God, we will be nailed, we will be beaten, we will be bruised. And so I bless you, sir, and I thank you so much for the brave and courageous work that you did as well during the COVID lockdowns. We, on our side, Pennsylvania tried to shut down all the churches, but we're a very armed society in America, and they tried to shut down all the churches in Pennsylvania. We, of course, did not comply. They tried to mask us. We did not comply. They tried to stop us from singing hymns. Of course, we did not comply. And, the government really couldn't do anything about it because a civil war would break out here and all the population is armed. So, being from North Korea, we're kind of known as the rooftop Koreans. So we're very into firearms and self-defense, etc., as God's given right. And but we are so thankful for your story and testimony. It's so inspiring, and God bless your wife and your family who stood with you during that time and did those amazing works. And I just pray that God's goodness through your life and your courage is glorified and magnified to the world. So thank you so much, Pastor. It's a tremendous honor to meet you.
Thank you so much. I mean, I can't even compare, my story to your father's story. There is no comparison. I mean, I was on vacation in comparison to what your father went through, but that's why we have to stand up and fight. So this never happens in our beloved nations, because if we don't, well, then what your father went through, it's going to be a reality for many of us.
Sorry. Sean, quick question. How much did you know of Pastor Artur's plight?
I've heard about it tangentially, and I believe, I believe he talked with Anastasia, who's one of our sisters, and about a year ago. But it's the first time I'm actually meeting him.
I was wondering maybe if you might be able to work with him to get him so that you can express his feelings a little bit better, and get that stuff out of him. just joking, of course. Jeff MD, you're very well traveled, all kinds of exposure to crazy governments around the world.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on this being on our doorstep, essentially?
Well, as the son and the grandson of pastors, it reminds me of Daniel in the lion's den, basically. But I think the message, especially for Americans, is don't be complacent. Don't think it can't happen here. And the way it can happen is you let them take an inch. Don't let them take an inch, because they'll take the mile. Push back on every little threat to your rights. And I've said it on the show before, the First Amendment, there's one word you won't find in there, and that's the word accept. You have freedom of religion, except when the government doesn't think you should. You have freedom of speech, except when you say something the government, it's not in there. So anytime someone tries to shut you up or tries to tell you can't go to church, or tell you, like during COVID, you can't gather. And I wanted the police to come by my house. We would have parties where you can't have more than 6 people. Well, we would have 10. And I was hoping the police would show up. If they asked what was going on, I'd say, we are practicing our First Amendment right to assemble. We decided to assemble at my house. Now, you explain to me where your rules or your laws or your edicts, where they trump the Constitution. The answer is they don't. But you can't let them take an inch. You need to stand up for every millimeter of your rights. Otherwise, they will. That's my takeaway.
Yeah, let me add something here, because my son is studying law. I studied law. My mom studied law, and that was like 150 years ago. Of course, it feels that long, but he has a saying, my son, when he talks to Canadians and Americans, and he has been speaking during different protests and rallies and shows and media. He says, "You have all your rights." It's true. You have all your rights until you decide to practice them. Then you find out very quickly that, oh my God, actually, I don't have my rights anymore. They have been infringed on. He says this is a death by the 1,000 bylaws. Little laws, little law here, little law there. Maybe they're not huge, but when you combine them together, suddenly you realize you have no right. I just have a question for you. Do you know, and because I'm a Polish immigrant, this is, of course, a big thing for us Poles, because we were attacked by the Nazis in 1939. But do you know that Adolf Hitler, first of all, was democratically elected as the Chancellor of Germany in 1933? From 1933 to 1939, do you know how many laws he implemented against the Jewish people? Just throw a number, anyone.
30, 40, 50.
Over 2,000 laws
Gee.
were enacted against the Jewish people from 1933 to 1939. So within 6 years, if you don't stand, and I just want to echo what you said, if you allow them to infringe on your rights just a little bit, you will find out soon that this was not an inch, this was actually a mile, because there is another one and another one, and they will never, ever stop. And if you don't believe me, go to New York and try to exercise your Second Amendment. And then you will very quickly find out that your laws have already been infringed upon. And if you want to try me, go to Chicago. I did some work in Chicago, feeding the homeless people, and I was told by the Americans that in Chicago the amendments are being infringed upon on a regular basis. So it's happening already. What I'm trying to say, don't wait any longer. Don't wait for more of your rights to be infringed on, or you will find yourself like us behind the Iron Curtain in China, being literally enslaved by a totalitarian regime that is telling us we will own nothing and we will be happy. Canadians, 50% of Canadians are struggling to pay their bills as we speak right now, and this is just the beginning. 50%, let that sink in. 50, every second person I see on the streets is struggling just to pay their bills. Now you add the housing crisis, renting crisis, commercial crisis. We are heading into a disaster we have never seen before. And all of that, and you can, Pastor Sean and Justin, you can attest to this. This is what happens when the devil, the cancer of the leech called communism and socialism, creeps in. Socialism and communism destroys everything and makes everyone miserable.
Thanks, Artur. Justin, apologies for the long wait to get your input.
They're equally miserable. That's important, right?
There you go.
Everybody's got the same level of misery.
Yeah. So, Justin, you were pretty young when you came over here from North Korea, but I'd love to hear your comments on everything Artur said, and then relating that to North Korea and then back to America. If you had told me, say, even as little as 10 years ago, that we'd be having a conversation with regards to communism being a possibility in America, I would have told you were crazy. But some of the stuff we've seen the left doing And again, we can see what's going on in Canada as a great harbinger of things to come here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I came to America in 1973 with my father. My father was in North Korea in the communist concentration camp where they beat him to death 3 times, but God wouldn't let him die. So I was born in South Korea, and the South Korean government also didn't like his preaching, so they picked him up and beat him to death a few times also. So, yeah, my father was beaten to death 6 times, but God resurrected him. And he kept on doing his ministry for his entire career, and he worldwide led anti-communist movements all around the world. Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev actually credited my father as being one of the really instrumental pillars of anti-communism all throughout the world. And he did incredible work, and so we are really blessed to be in that tradition. But hearing the testimony of Pastor Artur, it really touched me quite a bit, for how much he's suffering there in Canada, which is a country very similar to us. And, Canada is supposed to have a human rights, charter, and it's supposed to respect the dignity of people. But he has been tortured by his government. And in his testimony, the prisoners or the felons in Canada really rallied around him and supported him and recognized that he was in prison innocently. And that's one of the things which touches me about his testimony and also my father's life, is that a lot of our freedoms, whether it be in the communist countries or in America or in Canada, is due to the unruly criminals in our society. It's when the people are so ungovernable that the government is forced to give space that regular citizens who don't break the law enjoy the fruits of liberty. So that testimony reminded me of the humanity and the brotherhood that we share with all people in our country, all citizens, whether they be law-abiding or felons, because we all deserve human rights, regardless of our station, regardless of what we've done with our lives. And we all need salvation and grace and forgiveness, whether we're a felon or whether we're a law-abiding citizen. So God bless you, Pastor Artur. Amazing testimony. Thank you for helping wake up America, because we got President Trump elected. We won this election. Beat the commies back.
Amen to that, Justin. Artur, do you want to respond to anything Justin had to say?
Yeah, you're 100% right. I spent with my family and my friends the past 4 years going back and forth to USA and doing rallies and speaking. I spoke in hundreds of churches. I just got back before the election from New York. I spent some time over there teaching the Republican Party about communism and socialism, because I don't think Americans fully understand with what kind of an enemy are you dealing with. I think that's the problem, because if you knew how evil communism and socialism is, I think this would never happen. You would never allow your kids to be indoctrinated in this way, because it's a locust. And after that locust flies away, is nothing left. You have to rebuild the whole thing. It took 30 years to rebuild Poland after communism. This is one generation that will have to rebuild from the ashes. So it's very crucial, very important. Also, I want you to know that the victory with Donald J. Trump and his cabinet there with his people, this is just the beginning of the fight. It's not the end of the fight. I want you to know that they are not done. Those types of people, and please trust me, believe me, those people, they will never surrender. They will never say, okay, we have been beaten. They will lie. They will manufacture stuff. They will cheat. Those are leeches, and they only survive. They can only survive on the blood of others. You're dealing with entity that is so brutal and so vile and so from the pit of hell that you have to understand that the fight just began. I wouldn't be surprised if they will, and I said that before the election, that they will try to start the third world war. And look at what Biden is doing. I mean, Biden doesn't know where he is. Those handlers of his, right? They are, Obama's and Clinton's behind, and whatever other, players are there. They're trying to do everything in their power to prevent Donald J. Trump to, take office. So the fight continues. You cannot just, now it's kumbaya, let's just cruise around and life is good. No, you all hands on deck. We are fighting not just for us, we're fighting for the future of our children. This fight is not just for you and me. This fight is for the next generations to come, our children and their children. So we have to help. And one man cannot do it. And I said that so many times. One man cannot do it. One family cannot do it. One church cannot do it. That's why every time I'm asking people, help. We need help. All the fighters, my brother David has the saying, we are in the trenches and we have no problem shooting at the Germans, at the enemy. But we need you to supply the bullets. We keep shooting. We will keep shooting. We were made for war. However, we need the supplies. We need the people. And, our brother Jeff, he can testify to this, that if you cannot beat a warrior because he's just too powerful, the only thing you need to do is cut his supply line. If you can cut I don't care how powerful your army is. The moment you cut their supplies, you can have the greatest army on earth. Without supplies, everything is going to crumble. So we must support each other. That's what I was getting. We have to support each other. We cannot be lonely wolves. We are a pack of lions, a pride of lions, coming together against the hyenas. There is this movie on YouTube, you can watch it, when one lion, an older lion, has been overpowered by about 20, 30 hyenas. Have you watched that video? It's a fascinating video. It's hard to watch because this lion is done. He has no more strength to fight. He's bloody. And you look at this and say, that's it, buddy. It's over for you. And it almost is over for him until another lion shows up. The moment the second lion comes, a little bit younger than him, it's over for the hyenas. I don't care how many hyenas are they. As long as you have a buddy next to you watching your back, you will do fine. And that's why I have dedicated my past 4 years to keep going to America, because God spoke to me. The moment America goes down, if we lose this fight, it's over for all of us. Canada is gone. Europe is gone. The West is done. If America goes down, that's it. It's over. It's hell. So we must win this fight. There is no more option. We have to fight. And of course, we have to understand that when God is in this fight on our side, it's already over for the enemy. The moment God shows up, we have already won. The enemy just doesn't know it yet.
That's great, Artur. So, John, it's been a long time coming. I know that you've got a bunch of questions for the pastor. A quick question for you. When he was discussing supplies for military, I've been told by multiple veterans like yourself that one of the things that we do exceptionally better than anybody else is getting food to our troops when we're in a theater of war.
So I give an example of that. I was just thinking of this when he was talking. Dwight Eisenhower was the commander-in-chief of World War II. There's a reason why he was put in command of World War II, is because he was a logistical genius. And the strategy of winning that war was all about logistics, keeping supplies running to our troops, keeping fresh troops, fresh tanks, fresh bullets, fresh guns in the hands of our troops. Because we were honestly outmatched mechanically by a lot of our enemies. And Germany had better tanks, they had better planes, everything. But we just outperformed them in the logistical category. We took their ability to resupply their troops away, and we maximized our ability to supply our troops. That's why we won that war. No other reason. And I would like to go back to, there's been a theme in all of this. Before I get to my questions, I wanted to make a couple of statements. Pastor, you mentioned that communists are destroying and killing and raping and all that stuff. That's a characteristic that's familiar that the Bible speaks about. And that's the characteristics of Satan. The characteristics of Satan is that he roams around like a roaring lion seeking what he may devour. His goal is to steal, to kill, and to destroy. Those are the characteristics of communism. Those are the characteristics of socialism. And it does it slowly over a period of time. But once they gain, there is a tipping point. If you look throughout history, there is always a tipping point. When you talk about China, World War II, you had Chiang Kai-shek, you had Mao Zedong. They were allies. Mao strategically held his troops back so that Chiang Kai-shek's troops would get absolutely destroyed. Once he had the power advantage, then it was easy, and they took over very, very quickly. I feel like America has been at this tipping point. We have been edging to this tipping point for a very long time. We have seeded the ground of, we have given up our institutions one by one over time. They have played the long game. They were ready to take over. 2020 was just a litmus test for this. They absolutely have the goal of taking over and turning this into a communist socialist country, because then they can stamp out the people that are the problem, which is all of us. All of us in this group, all of the people watching this, we are the problem. We are the target. They want to take us out. Pastor Artur was an example. They were trying to set an example to show this is what we're capable of, to deter anybody from standing up. But what they don't understand, and what I believe is the biggest reason why they continue to be defeated, is because they don't understand what drives us. What drives us is a heart for God, a heart for truth, to speak truth to power, and realize that our inheritance is not in this world. Now, we want to make this world as good of a place as we can and be a good steward of it. But our inheritance isn't in this world. It's in the hereafter. So we don't have to worry. We don't have to, preserve our lives. We can lay our lives down to further the truth and further the, what we all believe. And I think that that's really important. And what I would say, and one of my questions for you, Pastor, was, I feel like the importance of this message to be spoken in the pulpits of all of our churches is so important. We have this, especially in America, when I talk about the church, I talk about the Big C church, the church overall. We have this message of comfort and, just like weakness. We don't want to be, we want to stay within the four walls of our church and preach our feel-good messages, our TED Talks, and have these rock concerts. And we don't really want to actually get out into the trenches. And I see a lot of weak pastors in the pulpits of our churches that are not standing up and preaching this message. And I think it's important that if our pastors aren't going to do that, we need to find pastors that will, and we need to, as Christians and men of the faith, especially I think the men in the faith, need to step out and go out into the world and speak truth to power and stand up against tyrants in our government. And so my first question would be, how do we do that? How do we start in our little spheres of influence locally in our communities? How do we start doing that?
Well, first of all, we have to remember that the Bible says, when you possess the land I have promised to your forefathers, just do not forget about me. When you possess the houses you have not built and the vineyards you have not planted, just do not forget about me. America has forgotten. Canadians have forgotten who is the giver. You see, we like the gifts. We don't like the gift giver. And that's the problem. So we have become apathetic, comfortable. It's all about me, I am myself. It's about we've molded, we shaped God into our own image. So he is the cleaning lady. We make a mess, we call on him, he comes and he cleans it. He is like a vending machine. When we want a chocolate bar, we put $1 in and the chocolate bar comes out. Those are our prayers. So we have completely lost the concept what the church was supposed to be all about. Another problem we have is why would you support woke pastors? Why would you even show up? Why would you give them a penny of your hard-earned money? Why would you go back to the churches that kicked you out like a dog, segregated you like an animal? Why would you go back to those places? It's beyond me. I don't understand. Why would you go and support Judas's Iscariots or Esau's that have sold you either for a bowl of soup or for a silver coin? This I don't understand. I would never support a person that has done this to me unless he would publicly go and apologize for all the evil things he has done. Then forgiveness kicks in. So that's another thing. And then because of the comfort, because we had so good for so long, the idea of suffering is so foreign. I mean, it's not foreign to Sean, it's not foreign to Justin and others. It's not foreign to me because I grew up in hell. I grew up in a very tough circumstances under the boots of a very evil, wicked people in a ghetto in Poland. So I am accustomed to suffering. I have been suffering before. So when a suffering showed up, I was willing to take the beating for something bigger than Artur Pawlowski, for family, for future, for children, for God, for faith. But you don't have faithfulness anymore because, first of all, majority of the pastors do not read the Bible. Also, majority of the pastors do not preach the Bible. They preach selectively what fits their narrative of God that they have created in their own image after their own heart. So now you've got a generation of Christians that think they are kitties. They think that you can sin and there is no consequence to that sin, that you can smoke dope and be fine, that God knows it's a path for the Holy Spirit. You've got this insanity right now of woke heresy and blasphemy being preached left and right because people just became comfortable. It's like we have been called to be a battleship. We have been called to be a fishing ship, but we love our churches to become the cruisers. When you're being served a gluten-free stupid donut, I really don't like those ideas of gluten-free, and also a best coffee, right? So if you don't have a good comfortable chair, if you don't have a nice facility, if you don't give them the dumb gluten-free donuts and the best coffee, then the other hair, they're not going to suffer sitting and listening to you for 2 hours if they are not entertained. You see, the pastors have become entertainers instead of truth preachers. Instead of telling people the truth that will set the captives free, we juggle in front of them and we entertain them. And for that entertainment, people give us money. Instead of preaching the truth and you give unto the Lord. You don't give to the pastor, you don't give to the church, you give to God because he requires you to give. You see, the whole concept, the biblical foundation has been eliminated and destroyed. And now what we have is a little bit from the old, a little bit from the new, mixed with humanism. You have to remember, all the isms are from the pit of hell. Fascism, communism, socialism, globalism, denominationalism, humanism, all those isms, they have a purpose. What is its purpose? Is to control you. And the majority of the church leaders, their purpose is to control their congregants. That's why pastors don't work with each other. They don't do stuff with each other because they're afraid of losing money. It has become a business. It's all about money. We have this Polish saying, that if you do not know what the whole thing is all about, it's always about money. So there are a number of things that happen to our Western civilization: the moral decline, the standards, the truth not preached, and the lies, embracing the lies. As you mentioned about losing all the mountains of influence, we have given up what used to be for the it used to be a job of the church. Educational system was never intended to just give to the government. You don't want, I mean, you can ask Sean and Justin and anyone from the communists, you don't give your children to be educated by the government. That's the dumbest idea ever.
Yeah.
You got some woke pedophiles teaching your children. What do you think is going to happen to them? They will
What's
come
happening
out,
in America?
right? So we've lost the justice system. Now it's a woke, rogue system. We've lost a healthcare system. It's not. It's no longer about healing people. It's about keeping them hooked on drugs. They're the biggest drug dealers in the country. We can go on and on and on. Entertainment is no longer about making us laugh and family. It's about cursing and nakedness and perversion and sexualization of the next generation. Banking system, it's to enslave us. So there's a lots of number of things that happen to us.
Hey, John, before you carry on with your next question, Pastor Sean, then Jeff, then Justin, I want to hear your thoughts on what Pastor Artur just said with regards to it becoming entertainment, money driven, all those sort of things. So we'll start with you, Sean.
Oh, yes, of course. Pastor Arthur knows very clearly and deeply. Maybe if I could just add one thing, especially with Western Christianity has been targeted by the Rockefellers and Rothschilds. Mm-hmm. They invested in Darbyism with the Scofield Bible, which both taught the Genesis chapter 4 and basically that you can't criticize the government of Israel, which also does pedophile rings, which runs huge trafficking rings with the CIA, Epstein, etc. So you can't criticize anything that Israel does. It's a misreading of Genesis chapter 14. And of course, they focus on the pre-trib rapture, which pacifies Christians politically, especially in accordance with Matthew chapter 24, where Hollywood spun it, saying that the rapture, if you got taken up, you were saved from the tribulation. Whereas in Matthew 24, Jesus actually gives the example of Noah. And if you were taken up, you got taken up by the waters and died and perished. Whereas if you remained, you were on the ark. So they actually reversed the scripture. And of course, their second scripture with the pre-trib is the 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 with the procession downward from heaven, meeting up in the air. And then they just say, that you'll be up with Jesus with heaven and tribulation. But the procession continues down to the earth for judgment. So it's a complete Hollywood rendition, opposite land of the scripture, twisting. It's like the cross, they turn upside down. That's what Satanists always do. They turn God, try to turn him upside down. And so they've done that, and they funded that through the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds, and using especially televangelists in the West who had very big reach, and they brainwashed so much of Christianity. We had 30 to 40% of evangelicals not going to the polls, and you literally have baby killer hordes coming. You have people who want to rape and pillage your children, sexualize them, and mutilate them. You have literally the hordes of demons from hell coming, and you decide as a Christian not to stand up for them and circle little a box. Like our founding fathers had to shoot people in the face, and you can't even circle a box. It is unbelievable. And we've, of course, rebuked that demonic spirit in Jesus' name. But, we've been targeted as a group in the pulpits, just like the Black community was targeted with Margaret Sanger. She was a, white racist, a leftist Democrat, also started the Ku Klux Klan. All of this racism and race baiting and this really demonic philosophy of, making the women into harlots and, abortions and killing and licentiousness, it really is all stemming from the same pit of hell. And definitely the pulpit has been targeted. And systematically and scientifically targeted. So I would just add that point, because it's definitely has weakened the church, as well as, but people are waking up. Like, if you see Trump's numbers this time, 25% more Catholics voted for Trump. So the Catholics actually are more engaged, but the evangelicals were, again, a big portion of them stayed home and did not participate, which is unbelievable, that you can call yourself a Christian and allow the hordes of Satan to literally devour your children. So, it's thank God delivered the miracle and we won, but it's still going to be a battle.
Well said, Sean. Jeff, I want to hear your thoughts, and Just as well. Then it's coming right back to you, John, for the balance of the questions.
You're muted.
You're muted, Jeff.
Sorry about that. No, I really can't speak to the in-depth theological part of it. My father was a pastor, but I wasn't a very good pastor's son in that sense. But I think people need to really get a grip on what they believe and what they're willing to do for those beliefs, and more importantly, what they're not willing to ignore for those beliefs. How many people say, well, you look at abortion, for example, they would say, I'm against abortion, but do you help prevent abortions? Do you do anything to stop it? I mean, you're not doing it, I get that, but it's like, you see someone who's got a problem, say they're an alcoholic. You can say, wow, at least that's not me, because I'm not an alcoholic. But if you tried to help the guy, what have you done to maybe help him through, find out what drove him to alcohol? Was his, maybe he lost a child, his family life got screwed up. What have you done to try and comfort that person or to help that person? So it's one thing to live a righteous life yourself, and that's important. But on the flip side, you've got to be understanding and willing to help others who maybe have fallen, because you can always, you can always get back up. And if nothing else, you can say about, God is the God of second chances.
That's well said, Jeff. It's really well said. I've never heard it described as the God of second chances.
Oh, I had that with a girl I knew from church camp years and years ago. She was married and her husband was running around on her, but she didn't believe in divorce, so she wouldn't divorce him. I mean, they'd been separated for 20 years and he's going out with all these other women and introducing his girlfriends to her. And she goes, I just can't get a divorce. And I said, why not? I said, you are a good person. You deserve a second chance at being happy in life. Not to, that's why I said, ours is the God of second chances. He's not going to make you be, saddled to a guy who has abandoned his vows. You didn't abandon the marriage, he did. He abandoned you. So you don't know that guy anything.
Yeah, interesting perspective. Justin, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, my father taught his church that all the members should have lathes in their basement when the commies come to make machine guns and go out to the field, that he'll be the general and lead them in the fight against the communists. So, as a result, the statists and the globalists and the communists all around the world, even in the U.S., especially the media, it certainly did not like my father. But yeah, I mean, if you think about what the state can do to you, the only thing the state can do to you is take your money and kill you. But if your value in your life is in your relationship with the Father in heaven, you don't lose much, because if you die, you're in heaven with the mansions and your dad.
Oh, that's funny. John, back to you for the last round of questions.
Yeah, so I'd like to add on to something that Pastor Sean was saying, because he mentioned the Schofield Bible. That's a very important thing of just, I would say, theological disinformation. It's the best way to say that, because disinformation and disinformation is where it's purposefully trying to lead you astray. Misinformation is accidentally leading you astray. But I would say that has not ended. I recently read a book by the Daily Wire's Megan Basham called Shepherds for Sale. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with this book, but it actually lays out how members of the World Economic Forum have been funneling money into theological and home Bible studies, and their whole goal was to influence Christians to not vote or to vote Democrat. That was the entire goal of this whole. There is a actual devotional series called The After Party, and some very prominent people in what I would call big evangelical circles was involved in this, and it's pure evil. And this book really, really in the evangelical circles stirred up a lot of controversy, but it was a good controversy because I think a lot of people in the church see what's going on in the world. They see all of the chaos, and they're looking for faith leaders to speak out about this stuff, because that's, as Christians, that's where we go. We go to trusted leaders in the church. And if those people are being infected with this woke ideology, we saw it in 2020. Churches shutting down. That's the whole beginning of your story, Pastor Artur. But it's not just that. We had the Summer of Love with the George Floyd incident, and churches standing up and giving, statements of like, we stand against racism. Well, of course you do. You're a Christian. We all stand against racism. That's not a thing in the gospel. It is not. So if you believe in Jesus and you believe in the gospel of Jesus Christ, then you're not going to be racist. That's just a fundamental thing. We're not going to discriminate against people because God didn't discriminate against people. And you see all of this stuff coming out of our pulpits, and that is what's leading to this. But I do think that what was exposed with various different things and people just getting more aware of this and saying, wait a minute, that's not what I'm seeing. That's not what I'm hearing. The news media and even some in Christian circles talking about how Donald Trump's a fascist and we should vote for Harris because Trump is a mean, horrible person. Meanwhile, as you mentioned, we're talking about abortion. We're talking about all of these things. It's literally murder, literally sin. And we can't seem to, people can't seem to grasp that in the church right now. And let me go back. I do think that a lot of people are waking up, and I do think that they didn't expect what happened 2 weeks ago tonight to happen. And it did. But as we said earlier, I think Pastor Artur said this is not a time for us to sit back and say, hey, we've won this. No, this is like Gettysburg. This is like the Battle of Gettysburg, the bloodiest battle. What happened after Gettysburg? 2 more years of bloody war and some awful battles that happened. We cannot sit back and say, oh, yep, time to get back in my comfortable spot. I'm wearing one of our shirts in my company, Righteous Savages. It's called "Comfort is Your Enemy," is what the shirt says. That's absolutely the truth. If you are comfortable, you're probably in the wrong spot. You should not embrace comfort. You should not embrace all of these things that get you unfocused on what lies ahead of us, because the work really starts now. And so, Pastor, I wanted to also ask you, and I'll make this quick because we're running short on time. But how do we influence? And this is somewhat similar to the question I asked you before, but a little bit different angle. How do we influence our communities and our politics in this country? Because I think that there's a lot of misnomers, and this is also coming from these higher ups in the church, because the reality is politics are messy. It's a messy business. It always has been. But I think that as Christians, we should not shy away from the messy. So how do we stand up for truth and influence the political circles, because that's really where the war is right now. And
Well, the Bible is very clear. We are to be the light in the darkness. God doesn't say, "Oh, I'm sending you, but I'm not sending you there." He didn't say, in the Bible, it says that we are to be in the word, but we are not to be of the word. It's all about the truth and being the light in the darkness, being the city on the hill. What is our job? I mean, politics is from the very beginning of the Bible to the very end of the Bible. We call our God the King. So if you don't want to be involved in politics, well, Christianity is not for you, because we serve the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. If there is a king, there is a kingdom. If there is a kingdom, there is an army and representatives of that kingdom. God calls us ambassadors. Being an ambassador is being a politician representing the kingdom. I mean, I don't know what kind of a Bible those people are reading. Obviously not the one I'm reading, because Daniel was mentioned today. He was a prime minister. He was minister. He was prime minister, in and out.
Chief advisor to the king at one point.
Right. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were ministers. Joseph was prime minister. I mean, you can go on. They were generals. Deborah was a general in the army, prophetess and general. You've got Mordecai, the highest office outside of the king in the land. What are you talking about? We are to be the light. You know why they called us unessential services? Because we have become pathetic losers. We became the tail, not the head. And you know what the tail is covering? Use your imagination. What is the tail covering? That's what the church has become. God doesn't want us to be the tail. He wants us to be the head. We are to be leading people. God says you are to be a lender, not the borrower. You are to lead the nations into the righteousness. You are to be the light everywhere. You know what the Bible says, that when a salt loses its saltiness? And let me just suggest to you that globally, as a whole church, I'm not talking about the remnant, as a whole church, we've lost our saltiness. And the Bible says when we lose our saltiness, the salt will be trampled by whom? By men. They called us unessential services, and rightfully so. Walmart, Costco, IKEA was more essential than the church. Why? Because the church refuses to obey. Simple. The church is not doing its job. We have turned to be the light in the darkness into darkness. Look at our churches. Our churches are so dark, you can't see a person in front of you anymore. It's becoming entertainment. We are entertaining people. We are trying to catch up with the world. We're trying to mimic the word. We have become the Babylon. The church has become the Babylon. Instead of being truth, it's in the end of the day, it's all about the truth. From the very beginning, did God really say that to the end of the revelation? It's all about the truth. When you give up on the truth, you replace that truth with comfort, with, trinkets here and there, with positive messages. Pastors are no longer truth tellers. They're motivational speakers. And I got nothing against you being a motivational speaker. Motivate people. However, you're not a pastor then, because pastors sometimes will tick people off. It's not about feelings. A good pastor, a good shepherd is not catering to people's feelings, because sometimes a stupid sheep wants to go to the wolves, and a good pastor will give that sheep a good beating, right? And by default, you are not catering to the sheep's feelings. Why God called us sheep? Because sheep can be extremely stupid and willing to just do foolish things. We as humans, we have a tendency to do very foolish things. That's why we need strong voice of leadership. And we didn't have that for a very long time. So I think God is flipping the tables. If I could describe what I'm seeing right now, is God is shaking the fence very powerfully and very violently. And people are falling to the left and to the right, to the left and to the right. When he's done shaking, everyone will have to choose either Satan or God. Also, he's flipping the tables on the entire system. He is flipping the tables. And only the real deal, the real people will come to the other side victorious. We're in a very exciting times. I see this is a fight between good versus evil. Even the election between those psychopaths and demon-possessed pedophiles and Donald Trump, this was a fight between good versus evil. So I'm very excited about this, because when God is going to be done with this flipping of the tables, he's going to clean his house. And you will have a choice to go to rogue, woke entertainer, or attend a real church with a pastor that is willing to hurt you, not because he wants to hurt you, because he wants to heal you. A good preacher, a real shepherd, is willing to crucify you on the cross. He's willing to nail you to the cross himself. A good preacher is a killer, a one that kills your ambitions, a one that kills yourself, your flesh, your pride, your ego, all those different things. You know, Jesus was so much different than other leaders, because the leaders want to have a huge following. Jesus wanted the real deal, and he was willing to preach all the way to separate the wheat from the chaff, the goats from the sheep, and the sheep from the wolves. I think we are in a season of the greatest separation that we have ever seen since the beginning of mankind. God is truly separating the real from the fake, the actors from the people that are willing to die for the truth. You know, when I was going through this craziness, people would ask me, seriously, are you willing to die on this hill? And I would say to them, this is the hill, people. If we are to die on any hill, this is the hill. Because if they're going to take our right to worship our God, everything will crumble, everything goes. The moment, look at that, every totalitarian country, every dictatorship, there is always controlled religion. If you cannot worship your God, you're done. Why? Because every dictator, every totalitarian authority, every pharaoh, if you will, wants to be worshipped. So they will never allow you to worship the living God, because they want to be gods.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting, and this is a point I was going to make earlier. But if you're a student of history, which I tend to look at history to see what the way forward is, and to kind of learn what we need to learn. But Karl Marx, who is widely considered one of the fathers of socialism and communism, was actually a Satanist. He actually wrote satanic plays before he wrote his Communist Manifesto. And in more recent times, Saul Alinsky is one of the famed people of the 1960s who wrote a book, Rules for Radicals. This book was followed by people such as Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, all of the people that are in the left circles now that are pulling the strings of power on the left. And his dedication in the first page of his book says, I dedicate this book to Lucifer, the king of disruptors. I may be misquoting it, but he actually dedicated his book to the devil.
Yeah.
So it's not hard to see. And everything that we saw in 2020, all of the rioting, all of the disruption, all of that craziness was directly out of that book. So it's flowing from Satan's playbook, everything that's going on in the world. And I do agree. I think this is really the providence of our almighty creator, giving us a chance to do the right thing, to actually do the work and set things straight. And isn't it also amazing that he uses, as he does so many times in the Bible, a flawed individual like Donald Trump, a billionaire, 3 times married man who's got his own flaws, but God is using him in a way that he might not be able to use somebody who is more polished, somebody who is more, I guess you could say, politically put together. But he uses this guy and literally saved his life earlier this year, turning his head at the last split second to save him from a bullet. That stuff just does not happen by chance. There are things that just don't happen by chance. And I believe that this is the time for us to rise up and do something.
because God wants to get the glory. You see, when He uses a people, like, I always said, if I was God, I would not use Artur Pawlowski. Artur Pawlowski speaks a funny English. Sometimes I have to Google English words to really find out what I'm saying. I wouldn't use Artur Pawlowski. However, God loves, first of all, He loves the challenge, but also He loves to get the glory for Himself. We as a family, we as a little church here, we cannot take the glory for ourselves because it was it's still an impossible task. Even me writing this book that became a bestseller is exposing the most powerful people in the land. Canadian government confiscated this book 3 times. They're scared of it. They're afraid. Also, I'm suing those people for what they did to me. I'm fighting the most powerful people in the country, and I have no fear because in the end of the day, I know that God's perfect will be manifested in my life, and no man, no Satan can disrupt that. So this is a message of hope. When you align yourself with God, the victor, you become victor. You see, we're not victims. The book Lions Do Not Bow is not a book about, look what the horrible things they have done to this guy. No, look what the mighty things the Lord has done. That's the book. This is a book of hope, that even though you can fight the most powerful people in the land, you can still walk as a champion, victorious, just like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, just like Daniel, just like Joshua and Caleb, just like Joseph that spent 13 years enslaved and imprisoned. You see, our God is bigger than the Obamas and Schwabs and Gates and all those devils working for the enemy. He's bigger. So there is hope. That's the message. The hope is that we have already won. The enemy just doesn't know it yet.
Well said. I completely agree. And we just have to, as men of faith, as Christian warriors, we have to take the fields which God has set in front of us. It's just like when the children of Israel walked into the promised land. He said, drive out the enemy. That was one of their biggest failures, in all honesty.
Yeah.
But he is giving us the opportunity to take that land for sure. I'm going to turn it back over to Chris. Thank you so much for allowing me to ask the questions. I've been looking forward to being able to talk to you ever since Chris told me you were coming on. So I really appreciate you allowing me to ask you the questions.
Thank you.
All right. So we're running pretty tight on time here. So as per usual, we get to the end of an episode. We've got some homework. So some of the homework for tonight is to go to streetchurch.ca if you can afford to donate to help the pastor. He's got all kinds of legal battles still underway, and I can't imagine the size of the attorney's fees with everything that's happened to the poor pastor here. The next piece of homework would be to share the pastor's story with other people, especially your church members, and get the word out. If this can happen in Canada, it can happen in America. And so people need to be aware of that. But in the same vein, like we always mention, is share Survival Dispatch news. You know, we tell the truth, the mainstream media doesn't. And what's interesting is that corporate America started to wake up to that. So there's a study from Pew Research that says 1 in 5 Americans get their news from personalities on social media. There's another article on one of the sites who shall remain unnamed from Dana White, who says nobody trusts the mainstream media anymore. It's done. It's dead. It's gone. And so you see groups like us, Survival Dispatch News, citizen journalists, are getting more traction than the mainstream media because we're telling the truth and not spreading propaganda. And for a shameless plug, Justin, tell me about Car Arms quickly before we wrap up this episode.
Yeah, Car Arms. We make the best concealed carry pistols in the world. We're the original micro compact 9mm. We've gone on with our business to acquire other brands. We own Thompson, Auto Ordnance, Desert Eagle, Magnum Research, and BFR. So help us out, buy one of our guns, and you'll have a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen your stuff firsthand, especially some of your custom stuff, and it's absolutely beautiful. Pastor Sean, I'm going to wrap up with we won. Don't be giving us any copyright strikes, okay? No copyright strikes. Pastor Sean is a rapper, and his latest one that he released was We Won, and like I say, that's going to be the end of it. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Appreciate everybody's time on the panel tonight. And please like, share, comment, subscribe, and God bless America.
God bless America.
Get in there and fight.
Man, I'm still in euphoria, and the libtards are still crying. We won, we won, we won, we won, my God, we won, we won, we won, we won. God save Trump, save us. We won, my God, we won, we won, we won, we won. Oh Lord, could've woke up today and ball and chain. Oh Lord, Kamala, rest on MAGA today. It's a Russian, no guns, grandma taking some pics. J6 in a slammer, no the bus right strip. Pay attention, wanna jail mamas for what? Don't want gay born in the school for their kids. Drag queen story hour, there's a session for kids. Mutilating our children, celebrating the sick. Elon said it woke my virus, is a definite thing. You said the wrong pronoun, we'll pull all this down. All the woke blue hair face come to kill you with scream. Social justice, kill this Nazi. Just dodge the biggest bullet that we ever done see. Patriotic MAGA train rolling back with the wind. Greatest comeback of all, we all came under fire. Uncle T just won historic Kamala, you got fired. We won, we won, we won, we won, my God, we won, we won, we won, we won. God save Trump, save us. We won, my God, we won, we won, we won, we won. Now we all knew that the left go dishonest was cheap. If I had to be honest, 2020 repeat. Dominion still here, 50 million illegals. No way we could win without the Lord's intervention. Listen, we just literally averted World War III. This ain't hyperbole. They trying to kill the big T. Gas prices, inflation, world burning the fire. Giving all of them money for our country sees lies. Getting rich and bumming people, politicians be grinning. Brown and black little babies have to die with no sink. Pushing endless war with Putin so he threatens a nuclear holocaust. Suckers shredding the truth. Got the borders wide open, getting gangs of terrorists. Looking around to be alive, people so young and talented. Colorado complexes taken by illegal gangs. America for the Trump. Fight, fight, fight back. We won, we won, we won, we won.